Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for tonight's council meeting. And I welcome the gallery and the press to the council meeting and remind you that the meeting is being recorded and live streamed to council's Facebook and YouTube pages. I would ask for everyone to please turn all mobile phones to silent mode. Please be aware that a hearing loop is available in the council chamber. Staff members are able to assist you with this at any time during the meeting. Please remain quiet in the gallery so everyone can hear the meeting. Anyone disrupting the meeting may be asked to leave. I would also like to remind members of the public watching the live stream that a copy of the agenda and information explaining council meetings can be found on the council website. Tonight you'll see that we have 16 reports in open council and 1 in closed council, a transparency rate of 94%. We'll now move to reading of the prayer, and please stand while I call upon Pastor Arthur Cherry from Winepress, Berwick Assembly of God Church to read the prayer.
Okay, let's pray. Heavenly Father, we just thank you for your love and for your grace, for your mercy and your goodness, your faithfulness to us. We thank you, Lord, for the gift of wisdom, and we would ask for the gift of wisdom to be upon these good folks that serve the city so well tonight. Father, we pray for just a spirit of collaboration and grace upon them. In Jesus' name, amen.
Please remain standing while I call upon Vincenzina Nicotera from the Casey Multi-Faith Network to read the faith statement.
The Casey Multi-Faith Network exists to promote peace, harmony, and understanding, and to do so in partnership with Casey Council and the wider Casey community. We aim to spread knowledge and clarity about what different religions or worldviews believe, teach, and practice. We believe that all members of religions and faiths have the right to peacefully practice and celebrate their own religion in a shared attitude of friendly coexistence and cooperation with all other peoples.
Thank you. Please be seated. The City of Casey acknowledges we're on the traditional land of the Bunurong and Wurundjeri people, and we pay our respects to their elders, past and present. Move on to apologies. Are there any apologies for tonight's council meeting? No apologies? It's been moved and seconded to move the suspension of local law until I determine to reapply local law. Moved by Councillor Gillich, seconded by Councillor Cristani. Any dissent? Then that is carried. I'd firstly like to maybe ask them to stand up. We have 2 special guests who joined us for dinner tonight. Georgia Miller and her mum, Fran Miller, and Fran works for the Casey team leader in procurement strategy. Can they stand up? They're up the back. Thank you. Georgia's very interested in local council and leadership and wants to be a mayor one day, so we're all in trouble, I think. So good luck, Georgia, and I know she's a keen footballer as well, showing a lot of ability. So absolute pleasure to sit with you both over dinner tonight, and we really welcome people who are really interested in local council. So Georgia, all the very best with being a great individual and a great community leader into the future. So we look forward to your involvement in the great city of Casey. So thanks for joining us tonight. I also have a special award. I hope I got the stats right. Councillor Smith will help me out if I haven't. It's for many, many years, decades of work from Jenny and Neil Toyne. Help me out here, Neil. You're president for 20 years?
17 years.
17, and Jenny was
20 years secretary.
20 years secretary. And of course, all of us know Jenny and Neil quite well because they do a lot of other community work as well. But they've been the mainstay of the Cram and Chorale, who we've had at so many functions and sing so well and really make citizenships and all our functions really buzz with their tremendous vocals. And they're stepping down at this point in time, but I thought it would be very remiss of council if we didn't offer them the recognition they deserve. They've done it for free all their lives with great passion and involved so many people and given us many hours of enjoyment, and we're extremely proud of the pair of you for all the work and great community service you've done. And I know some other people, before we get you out the front for a picture and give you a certificate on behalf of the City of Casey, I know Councillor Smith wanted to say a few words, and then Councillor Stapleton and maybe some others. So, Councillor Smith.
Yes, Mr Mayor. Look, I've probably known Jenny and Neil longer than anyone in the room, possibly, when I had black hair. That's how long ago. This is not a farewell, because you're still sticking around, you're still going to be part of the choir, but the extensive record they've had in their leadership roles, there's no doubt that they are the driving force behind the longevity of the Cranbourne Chorale, because it's been a very generous group in terms of its commitment to community events. They've done lots of concerts and events for me, and at no cost, and the choir members are just willing to come out and perform. Because not only do they support the events, but they just want to perform. They just welcome the opportunity to get out there and do their stuff. They are very, the group is very, very good tenants of the factory, which of course is close to my heart. And Neil and Jenny at different times have served on the advisory committee for that. Neil and Jenny were the first joint recipients of the Lindsay King Arts Award, which was, someone put them up, I think individually, and we said, God, what sort of, there'd be divorce in the house if we gave it to one over the other, and it was a no-brainer to give them a joint award. So the community is very lucky, the Cranbourne Chorale is very lucky to have had them. As I said, they're not going away. It's not a eulogy. This is, and it's not a farewell. It's just that you're stepping down from your roles, and we get that because after a long time, that's what happens and needs to happen. And so, enjoy your time away from the leadership role, but I've no doubt you'll be there at all the events. And Neil's voice is always very clear in the choir. His deep baritone voice, and Jenny's voice. She's always in tune and always out there and loud. And it's just great having them around and in the community. So, and I thank them both on behalf of council, and I'm sure the choir, if they were here, would be saying exactly the same thing, but they'll hear that tomorrow night, I assume, or whatever. Okay, thanks.
Councillor Stapleton.
Thank you very much, Mr Mayor. And I too would like to honour this wonderful couple who have done so much for the performing arts and for choirs in Cranbourne and in the wider city of Casey. If I could mention a couple of things. One is about the succession planning, and I think everyone does have a period of time and there is a time to take a break or to step back. But what this wonderful couple, Jenny and Neil Toyne, have done is made sure that everybody else in that choir is actually geared up to carry on. The wonderful thing about Jenny and Neil is that they actually encouraged anyone who wanted to be part of their choir to be a part. They also were a part of another choir at one stage, I remember. But I'm just looking through all my emails from Jenny and there were just so many things that they have been involved in. In my church at St John's in Cranbourne, we've had just so many wonderful, wonderful performances where we packed the church out. The Cranbourne Community Carols, when we were trying to get the two churches to put together a wonderful community carols. Cranbourne Chorale have been there, and have they made that event something special indeed. I know that they sing at the Narre Warren North carols, and they also came along and sang at the Casey Demons Club song, and even though we weren't able to get that up and running with the club because of the changeover with the Melbourne Football Club, it was still a really wonderful experience. We celebrated 25 years of Cranbourne Chorale in 2016. And if I could just mention their trip to China that everyone in the community was taken along with. We were there with them preparing for their journey. We watched them as they went overseas, and then they did a wonderful presentation night where we got to see all the photos and got to hear all the songs that they sang, and to hear about their wonderful experience with meeting with the Chinese choirs over there, and what a wonderful experience that was for them. So could I personally, and on behalf of the residents of the Mayfield Ward, say thank you so much. Thank you so much for all that you've done. We'll still see you around, of course, but thank you for what you've done to date. Really, really appreciate it.
Thank you, Councillor Stapleton. Councillor Cristani, I saw you moving like you're taking off in the 100 metres there, so no? You're going to say a few words?
Yeah. Thanks. I actually do want to add to this. I too have noted many citizenship ceremonies where the Cranbourne Chorale have appeared, and I've seen your faces, and I thank you for your service. You've blessed so many people, so many new citizens, and beyond everything else that you've done as well. All the best, and I hope to see you again soon. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Cristani. So now I'd like to ask all the councillors to come up the front near the flags, and Jenny and Neil to come forward while we get a photo taken with them holding their certificate. Thank you. Thank you, councillors, and thank you again, Neil and Jenny. I'll move on now to Councillor Smith, who wants to talk about a book launch.
Mr Mayor and councillors, and I'll do this on behalf of Councillor Rosario and of Councillor Stapleton. Unfortunately, Councillor Rosario and I couldn't make it to the launch of the Autumn Place book yesterday because it was during business hours and school hours for me. But Councillor Stapleton went and represented us and did it well. It's a book about Autumn Place. It's called The Fantastic World of Autumn Place. It was organised and funded by the City of Casey as a recognition of Autumn Place, which is undergoing, if you haven't been down there recently, go down and have a look at the massive transformation happening down at Autumn Place. The new building that's being erected there and the new parkland is fantastic. And I hear that yesterday the kids were just, they didn't worry about the book, they wanted to get on the playground. It looked so attractive, but that's coming soon. But I want to thank Councillor Stapleton for launching that. If we had more time, I'd be asking her to read it, but I won't get her to do that. But it is a great book. It's going to be in the Casey Cardinia Library branches, so people can go and have a look. And the figurines that are in the park are in the book. So very worthwhile project. As I said, if you haven't been down Autumn Place, just go for a drive, quick detour and have a look. It's just amazing how it's beginning to look and will be even better. And Mr Mayor, if I can keep going. Yep. My last thing I want to talk about tonight is Councillor Stapleton last week was honoured with an amazing award. I was very lucky to get it maybe 4 years ago, and that is through Rotary. Rotary International have their highest award that they can give out to not just members but non-members, is the Paul Harris Fellowship. And Paul Harris was one of the founders of Rotary International, and they've named the award after him, and it's for outstanding community service or in a field of endeavour. I was invited by former Councillor Mick Morn to go to a Rotary meeting to talk about Bunjil, and did my talk, and I was pretty impressed with myself. And at the end of it, I wasn't there to give the talk. At the end of it, they surprised me by presenting me with a Paul Harris Fellowship. And I know Councillor Stapleton, they got her exactly the same way the other night. So Commit to Casey, she was there to talk about. I'd had a bit of a heads up a few weeks ago, and I had to be very quiet and not tell her. But unfortunately, they asked me to come along as another Paul Harris Fellow, but couldn't make it. But I know it would have been a fantastic honour and a great night for her. I'm disappointed, she hasn't brought her medal, because you get a medal around your neck and you get a pin that I wear proudly at lots of events. And it is really a big honour. And the club has to apply to Rotary International to get it. And I'm assuming that not everyone that they apply for will get it, because the International Rotary Board has to approve it. So it must have been an impressive application because Councillor Stapleton got it. So congratulations, a great honour for you, I know, and good recognition.
Well done, Councillor Stapleton. Are there any other councillors that wish to bring something forward during the suspension of local law? No? Then I now determine the local law reapplied. Move on to confirmation of minutes. Is there a mover and seconder to confirm the minutes of the council meeting held on Tuesday the 21st of August 2018? Moved by Councillor Gillich, seconded by Councillor Stapleton. Is there any dissent? That is carried. Declarations of conflicts of interest. Does any councillor wish to declare a conflict of interest for tonight's council meeting? I do on item 6.6, a direct conflict for the reasons I sent to our acting CEO. Councillor Stapleton.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Item 6.6 for me also, I indicated to the acting CEO, indirect conflict of interest. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We'll move on to officers' reports now. So we'll start off with Councillor Aziz. You wish to withdraw some items for further discussion?
Mr Mayor, I wish to withdraw items 6.1, 6.3, 6.4, 6.6 and 6.15, please.
Thank you. Councillor Rosario?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just 6.8, thank you.
6.8. Okay, thank you. And are there any other councillors who wish to withdraw items? No. So, is there a mover and seconder to adopt the recommendations listed in the officers' reports that have not been withdrawn for discussion as follows: 6.2, 6.5, 6.7, 6.9, 6.10, 6.11, 6.12, 6.13, 6.16, and 6.14. Oh, no, Damien's pulling 6. Oh, sorry, 6.14 because Councillor Rosario, you're not pulling out 6.14, are you? And 6.14. So I have a mover and seconder to adopt those recommendations. Moved by Councillor Flannery, seconded by Councillor Stapleton. Sorry, you got a question? Didn't I say 60? I did say 60. Okay. So we have that moved and seconded. Do we have any dissent? Then those items are carried. We'll move now to public question time. Ms Frost, are there any public questions this evening?
Through you, Mr Mayor, there have been no questions received.
No questions received. We'll move to officers' reports and we'll start off 6.1, parking strategy. Councillor Aziz.
Thanks very much, Mr Mayor, and I would like to move the recommendation in my name.
Seconded by Councillor Rosario.
Now, Mr Mayor, before I speak to the recommendations before us on the screens, I just want to ask the officers responsible just a couple of questions. My first question really relates to the essence and the underlying reasons as to why we sought this parking review. And the reason being, Mr Mayor, is that we were finding that a lot of our residents and a lot of our traders, rather, in many of our commercial precincts were actually struggling to have enough parking available for their customer base, and because other residents unfortunately were parking, and particularly train commuters, due to the lack of availability of car parking for trains and public transport in general, we're using parking for all-day purposes rather than respecting the need for those traders to have parks available for their customers as they come and go through the day. And one of the traders, Mr Mayor, that I spoke to today is a lovely gentleman in Berwick Village. I won't name the business, but I'll say that this particular gentleman and his wife have been a Berwick institution for a very, very long time. And they have informed me that in the last 3 years, they've basically lost over 40% of their regular trade or trade base as a result of these parking behaviours. And so I'm not a traffic engineer, and I'm certainly not a parking expert, but what I will be seeking of you today is assurance as our experts that what has been exhibited in the strategy and what will actually be enforced through our local laws people will serve to alleviate those concerns because that was essentially the basis from which I actually moved the motion to get this looked at. And what we want to do is finish the job tonight without needing to come back for a second bite of the cherry. Trading conditions are particularly harsh. I think it's fair to say that our economy, both at a local, state and national level is not the best that it could be at the moment. That many of our retail traders in particular are finding it very challenging to make ends meet, and we're a council that is entirely focused on economic growth and creating jobs, and therefore any inhibitors to those jobs being supported, and any issues that stand in the way between the traders being either operating at a loss or a profit are issues that this council will always take very seriously. So having asked a question in such a roundabout way and given you a bit of a, what I hope will be partly a Dorothy Dixer, I will now sit down and shut up and ask you to respond. Thank you very much.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. The officers have gathered data that's been available to them through the customer service and all of the other data that's been gathered within the organisation, and then we undertook the community consultation process, and we met with 3 traders groups who provided information, as Councillor Aziz mentioned, and also we had a survey for residents to respond to as well. And so the gathering of all of that information, we've identified that there is a need for the resources that have been identified in the budget going forward, and as of tomorrow, Mr. Mayor, there will be 4 dedicated officers who will be commencing on parking enforcement, and attention will be given to those commercial areas which were identified as being in a high need for enforcement.
Thank you. Look, I thank you for that, and I'm sure you have done a sterling professional job in bringing this to conclusion. What I will ask, though, is I'm not sure if there is an inbuilt mechanism within the strategy to allow for a review term.
Mr. Mayor, the strategy provides for a review in 4 years' time.
Yeah. Thank you for that, Mr. Mayor. I think on reflection and in dynamic economic conditions, I think 4 years is way too long. And what I think should happen is that there should at least be an interim review that comes back every 12 months. And I'd like to perhaps move a point too, with the indulgence of the Chamber, that the effectiveness of the strategy be tested over the next 12 months, and that a report come back to Council no later than the first meeting of September 2019 to advise on the rollout and outcomes from the strategy. And I'll put in a part 3 as well, that through our communications department, comma the Casey trading community, be encouraged to continue to report to Council on non-compliance hotspots throughout the city that can then be given a particular enforcement focus at any given time, comma, and that those reports and the response made by Council be the subject of formal reporting to the Chamber. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I'll just leave that for your obtaining of leave of council and for the consideration of our colleagues.
Do we have leave of council for those changes? Yes, that's good.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Officers, once again, I thank you for your efforts, but I just think this is not an issue that we would want to let go of, to be reviewed every 4 years. If I was a trader out there, I'd want to know that my municipal government is doing everything that it can to look after me and look after the staff that I employ and the families that I feed as well. So I think it's really important that the trading community is sent in very, very clear and direct terms a very strong message by the City of Casey Council that we are always behind you, that we respect what you do and the effort that you go through to get up every morning and earn $1, or sometimes not every morning but every evening, and go out and work throughout the night and sometimes overnight as well. And so these people are worthy of our respect, our admiration, our support, and everything that we can possibly do to support them and their capacity to earn a living for themselves, their families and their employees. So I'm very happy to be moving the strategy with those additional recommendations, Mr. Mayor, and once again I wish to underscore my respect and gratitude to the officers for undertaking the review, and let's hope that it proves to be effective for the sake of all of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ziz, and thank you, officers, for being present to answer those queries. Are there any questions or dissent on the matter? Then that is carried. We'll move along to 6.3, National Growth Areas Alliance. Councillor Aziz.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I wish to move the recommendation before us in my name.
Seconded by Councillor Ablett.
So the National Growth Areas Alliance is a valuable advocacy body that advocates on behalf of all municipal governments around Australia which happen to be experiencing growth. And in my second mayoral term, as I recall it, Mr. Mayor, between 2015 and 2016, I had the honour and pleasure of actually being the Victorian spokesperson for the Alliance. And we tackled a number of critical projects and looked at all the projections for the growth of our nation, and particularly the growth of Victoria as a state, and the sort of infrastructure that is currently lagging, which is impacting heavily on the quality of lives of many millions of Victorians, and certainly many of our fellow country women and men throughout Australia. There is, to my shock and horror, Mr. Mayor, billions and billions of dollars that are lagging, both at the federal government level and the state government level, which is, as I said, impacting on the quality of our lives collectively as citizens. And so it was really important for a leading council like the City of Casey, which happens to be Victoria's largest city by population, and now the fastest growing in the state, a city that will have over 500,000 people in just under 20 years, making it the largest area by population in Victoria, but also larger than the entire state of Tasmania. It's quite mind-boggling when you think about those figures, and quite amazing when you continue to reflect on the need for ongoing infrastructure investment. And this is why programs like Commit to Casey, fixing our roads and extending our railway lines, particularly the Cranbourne Railway Line, are so fundamental to the future of our city and to our collective aspiration of becoming Australia's most livable city. And so it is indeed my pleasure tonight to rise in the chamber and support this update. The National Growth Area Alliance does an amazing job every year to bring the infrastructure challenges of our nation to the fore minds of our elected politicians at every level of government we have in our country. And so it is a job that they do on all of our behalf, but also on behalf of all future generations for which we all come to work on a daily basis, certainly here in the city of Casey. And so, Mr. Mayor, on that note, I commend the motion to the chamber.
Thank you, Councillor. Are there any questions or dissent on the matter? Then that is carried. We'll move on to 6.4. Councillor Aziz, you again. Elizabeth Close.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wish to move the recommendation in my name.
Seconded by Councillor Flannery.
Mr. Mayor, this is probably one of the recommendations that I really hoped I didn't have to get up and move tonight, because had VCAT actually followed the lead of our council and actually declined the planning permit for what is going to be a childcare centre in a quiet, peaceful residential street, we wouldn't have to do any of this this evening. But unfortunately, once again, council makes a sensible planning decision, and yet the applicant goes to VCAT and overturns it and turns into a nightmare what is actually a peaceful and family-oriented residential street in the heart of one of our most beautiful estates in the city of Casey, the Berwick Springs Estate, in the heart of our growth corridor here in our city. And so this overture or overturning of council's planning decision to allow inappropriately a childcare centre to proceed there has basically turned the lives of those residents upside down. And those residents have come to me and have asked me to make representations on their behalf at council in absolute distress, because they were seeing construction trucks in a court made up of some 12 residences only come down right to the bottom of the bowl of the truck and do U-turns and return at the same time that their young children were actually playing on the streets. And it was just a horrible situation and an atrocious situation from a safety perspective, and one that should never have been allowed by VCAT. About 3 years ago, Mr. Mayor, I rose in this chamber to move a motion that council write to the state government to reform VCAT. Nothing has happened. They still continue to make some decisions that leave a lot to be desired, decisions that affect the real lives of people, decisions that have an economic impact on businesses and actually end up destroying lives. And today, some 3 years later, we're still none the wiser as to when VCAT will actually get its act together and start to behave in the interest of Victorians, and particularly those Victorians that live in our city, for whom we will stand up each day and every day, Mr. Mayor. So council has once again been forced into this position of holding the baby, of being the only responsible authority left to carry the burden on behalf of its residents and actually implement enforcement measures and actually go out there and see if it can remedy this horrible and hopeless situation that should never have occurred in the first place. And so on this occasion, Mr. Mayor, I thank our officers for their proactivism in responding to our cry for help, made on behalf of the people that we represent, made on behalf of this family-oriented neighbourhood, and bringing back some measures that can then be put in place that would both give the residents peace and quiet, but also give them some sort of level of assurance on safety matters that have now been completely abandoned as a result of the irresponsible actions of another level of government. And I'm happy that we have come to this point. I sincerely hope that those measures will work for the sake of those residents and for the sake of the safety of their children, who are really the future of the city of Casey. And I want to send a message tonight to the residents of that street, as well as any other resident in the city of Casey that may feel slighted as a result of an inappropriate planning decision, that our council will always be listening and will always be ready to respond on their behalf and on behalf of their families, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Rosiers. Are there any questions or dissent on the matter? Then that is carried. We move now to item 6.6, of which I'm declaring a conflict of interest, a direct conflict of interest for reasons given to the acting CEO. And I think Councillor Stapleton, you wish to declare a conflict of interest?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I would like to declare an indirect conflict of interest as per indicated to the acting CEO earlier this afternoon.
Yeah, can I have a nomination for the chair?
Yeah. Mr. Mayor, in light of your absence and the absence of one of the deputies, I wish to nominate the other deputy, Councillor Wayne Smith, to chair the meeting.
Yeah, seconded by Councillor Cristani. Any dissent? That is carried. I will vacate the room.
Okay, Councillor Aziz.
Thank you, Mr. Acting Mayor. I begin by moving a motion of no confidence in your... No, I'm only kidding.
Being no dissent. No.
Thank you, Mr. Acting Mayor, and forgive me for my flippancy, but I wish to move an alternate recommendation, and I believe the alternate recommendation is up on the... No, it's not up on the screen, and so I will actually be reading it out.
Okay.
Mr. Acting Mayor.
Have you sent it, or you haven't sent it?
Sorry?
You haven't sent it?
No, I haven't,
okay.
and I do express my apologies for that. So the alternate recommendation would be one, that the council report be noted. Part two, that prior to the issue of a statement of compliance for stage 9 and or 10 of the Lockhaven estate. Am I going too fast? Okay, my apologies. So, part two, that prior to the issue of a statement of compliance for stage 9 and or 10 of the Lockhaven, Lochaven estate, shown in the master plan, and open brackets, prepared by Charlton Degg, that's spelled D-E-G-G, reference REF full colon 1041, capital C for Charlie, capital P for Papa, dash A for Alpha. Sorry, I can't see you, so am I making sense? Excellent, okay. Rev, I think that stands for revision 16, close brackets. Under the planning permit, open brackets again, ref, colon, capital P, small l, small n, capital A, 00929 /15 close brackets, comma, the H3 signalised T intersection including related Hall Road duplication works,
Hall Road, yeah.
Hall Road duplication works must be constructed and operational. Full stop. It must be delivered as part of the Lockhaven Estate Development Works and must not be bonded or subject to any other financial guarantee. Part 3, that council officers are to report back to council at its first meeting in October 2018 as to the timing of delivery of the H3 intersection as part of the Lockhaven estate, comma, and the soonest practicable timing of the completion of the duplication of Hall Road open bracket DCP project RD09 close bracket in its entirety as part of the H3 T- intersection works. Part 4, that due to the high incidence of crash data on Hall Road over the last 5 years, and serious issues as set out in the Traffics group. Traffics is spelled with an IX, not an ICKS. In the Traffics group report, dated the 31st of August 2018, that Hall Road be included as part of the Commit to Casey campaign, comma, Council's biggest advocacy campaign that calls on the state government and the opposition to fix Casey roads. And finally, part 5, that council writes to and meets separately with Vic Roads, the elected member for Cranbourne, Mr. Jude Pereira MP, comma, Labor's candidate for Cranbourne, Ms. Pauline Richards, comma, and Liberal candidate for Cranbourne, Miss Anne-Marie Hermans, to outline the safety concerns relating to Hall Road's existing conditions, comma, as represented by our local residents. Sorry, come again?
Just after Herman's.
So after Herman's, comma, outlining the safety concerns relating to Hall Roads, as in apostrophe S, existing conditions. Existing conditions. Comma, as expressed by our local residents. And as outlined in the aforementioned traffic engineering report, comma, and seeking affirmation that an upgrade of the Hall Road / Evans Road intersection, open brackets, RDO2 small a, RDO2 small a, close brackets, comma, and Hall Road / Cranbourne Frankston Road intersection, open brackets, RDO2 small b, close brackets, is a top election priority to save lives, comma, and that funds collected to date on behalf of Vic Roads through the Cranbourne West Development Contributions Plan would be made available immediately to support the design and delivery of these intersections. And that, Mr. Acting Mayor, concludes the amended recommendation that I intend to pursue.
Okay, so do we have a seconder? Councillor Rosario, I was going to say Cristani. I was going to say Cristario. Okay. Before I go any further, can I just congratulate Julia, who has to type that stuff, and we put her under immense pressure, and I couldn't cope with it, and probably no one else around this table could. So, congratulations, Julia. Take the rest of the day off. No.
Yes.
Well done.
Okay. And Julia, I did mean that I had eye surgery on Thursday, so I really couldn't see you. That's why I have to take my glasses on and off. So
but
well
you've never
done.
looked so good.
I had every confidence in you, and Councillor Smith has never looked as good looking as he's done tonight. So. Look, okay. I thank you. I thank you so much, and I thank the Chamber and particularly members of our gallery for their patience with me as I read that out. What I would like to do now is to actually go through an introduction to the amended recommendation, and then hopefully participate in debate with all our colleagues on this. It's an important safety issue, and I present this tonight in the absence of the Mayor, whose electorate, and I understand it's Councillor Rose and Councillor Stapleton's electorate as well, but they've both declared, except for Councillor Rowe, they've declared a conflict of interest. And so I take this up tonight and as part of my portfolio as as a councillor responsible for roads. And so over the weekend, Mr. Acting Mayor, the Mayor handed me a letter that he had received from the Save Cranbourne West Residents Action Group, which outlined their serious concerns about the safety of the Hall Road conditions. I have a copy of this letter right here with me, and I'm happy to table it for other councillors to examine, along with an expert report from a traffic engineering consulting firm called the Traffics Group, which outlined the serious nature and significant number of traffic accidents on Hall Road between Western Port Highway and the Cranbourne-Frankston Road. The Safe Cranbourne West Residents Action Group, Mr. Acting Mayor letter, is supported by thousands of other residents within the Cranbourne West area. This particular organisation has a membership, I'm told, of over 1,100 Cranbourne West residents who are passionate about protecting themselves and their families who use this roads network on a daily basis. The dangerous conditions along Hall Road are evidenced in the crash data that the organisation has provided to Council from the Traffic Engineering Group, and again I have copies of that which I'm prepared to table at a moment's request from any of our colleagues, Mr. Acting Mayor. As per the officer's report outlined in our agenda papers tonight, I wish to congratulate the officers and acknowledge that the H3 intersection is an important part of securing the safety of residents using Hall Road. The delivery of the intersection forms part of the Lockhaven estate. Lockhaven's planning permit requires the intersection to be delivered as part of the Stage 9, which is the last stage of the estate, and that is where I believe we're at now. It is absolutely fundamental, Mr. Acting Mayor, that the safety of our local community and Casey residents travelling through Cranbourne West, that no further lots are released within the Lockhaven estate, i.e. stages 9 and or 10, until the H3 signalised T intersection is delivered. This overrides any previous conversations conducted by council officers with the representatives of the Lockhaven estate. In order for further lots to be released within the Lockhaven estate, the signalised H3T intersection must be delivered. The community require it to be delivered immediately, and it is not acceptable, Mr. Acting Mayor, for more homes and lots to be released within the estate without the intersection in place. This is not an unreasonable request, given that Lockhaven are down to less than 100 lots to be delivered in stages 10 and 9, and that the intersection works have not even commenced. If we don't make the developer build the signalised H3T intersection now, then in effect Council will be allowing the developer to build out the whole estate without delivering a critical piece of community infrastructure. This would result in an irresponsible and unacceptable outcome. The Lockhaven estate accommodates approximately 1,000 homes, including a residential village. It also includes an important neighbourhood centre for Cranbourne West residents, with a supermarket to be delivered on the corner of Hall Road and Evans Road as part of the estate. Imagine the supermarket operating without a proper, safe intersection. It would be a disaster. The incident of serious accidents...
Councillor, is he seeking an extension?
I would be seeking that, yes.
2 minutes. Someone like to move in second? So, Councillors Crestani and Gillick. No, thank you.
Thank you to the councillors. The incident of serious accidents would continue to rise. The Traffics Group report says it all, and there have been many serious casualties along Hall Road to date. We will have fatalities on our hands next because we failed as a council to act responsibly and protect our residents. It is no good for council officers to say that council are holding money in case the developer of Lockhaven doesn't build the intersection. It is not acceptable to defer its delivery by allowing the developer to pay a bond or give a financial guarantee. There does not need to be any risk factors with this infrastructure, Mr. Acting Mayor. The fact is that it is in the planning permit for Lockhaven to deliver the intersection, and they must deliver it now. Further, in addition to securing the delivery of the H3 signalised T intersection, I'd like to emphasise that the Hall Road, Evans Road and Hall Road, Cranbourne-Frankston Road intersection upgrades, known as projects RD02A and RD02B in the Cranbourne West DCP, are an absolute priority to ensure the safety of our community. These projects are to be delivered by the state government. Council has collected nearly $5 million towards the delivery of these projects, which is a significant part of the funding required to fix these intersections. It is critical that this money is made available immediately to Vic Roads so that the intersections can be fixed. This is why the recommendation we are writing to Vic Roads in relation to the funding that is available for these road projects and emphasising the urgency of fixing the intersections is prevalent in our amended recommendation tonight.
10 seconds, Councillor.
In addition, officers are to meet separately with each of the elected members to advocate for this, and in conclusion, I'm putting to my colleagues the fact that given the high number of serious accidents, that we adopt this recommendation tonight for the safety of our residents. The necessary upgrades must occur and must be treated as a priority. And for this reason, Hall Road must be included in the Commit to Casey campaign.
I'll have to wrap you up there, Councillor, but I feel some "are you awares" in my waters. I'm sure they're coming.
And just to reflect on that prophecy you've just made, Mr. Acting Mayor, I'd like to begin with my "are you first aware?" And that is, I have the planning permit in my hands, and you'll recall, Mr. Acting Mayor, that we've had some debate in the boardroom prior to descending on the chamber for the commencement of the proper meeting. And I think there was a challenge posed in relation to the recommendation that it might actually contradict the planning permit. Now, I'm advised that there has been legal advice obtained which suggests that there is no conflict with the planning permit. And in particular, Mr. Acting Mayor, I'd like to take the liberty now to read paragraphs 31 and 32 of that planning permit. 31 says, prior to statement of compliance of stage 9, or, and please reflect on this, Mr. Acting Mayor, or as otherwise agreed by the Council relating to intersection H3 as identified in the PSP, these must be delivered as a signalised interim intersection in accordance with the approved functional layout plan and detailed design plans to the satisfaction of Vic Roads and the responsible authority being, of course, the City of Casey. And that's exactly what paragraph 2 reflects or says. Further, condition 32 states, before the issue of a statement of compliance for any stage of the subdivision under the Subdivision Act 1988, the developer must conduct, in accordance with the approved engineering construction plans and to the satisfaction of us, the responsible authority, the following. A, roads, including traffic management devices, intersection, curbs, channel, drainage, fibre optic conduits, permanent survey marks, temporary turnaround areas, and I can go on and on and on. And so part 2 is very much indeed reflected in those highlighted sub-paragraphs of the planning permit. And so moving this tonight serves to assure one thing and one thing only, Mr. Acting Mayor, and that is the absolute safety of our residents to be delivered now, right now, when the money is actually available in our reserves. Mr. Acting Mayor, I commend the motion to the Chamber.
Thank you, Councillor Aziz. Is there any dissent? Councillor Rowe is dissenting. So, Councillor Cristani, do you wish to reserve your right? Councillor Rowe, do you wish to speak?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I'll start off with...
Thanks for the promotion, but it's okay.
That's all right. You deserve to be Mayor. The moving of this motion and the process amuses me and baffles me. That The intersection itself is to be built by two developers, Dackland and Wolfden. And I'm assuming, and I will ask the officers, either one, what is the condition upon Wolfden?
Through you, Mr Mayor, there's a condition specified by Vic Roads that requires that prior to statement of compliance being issued for stage 3 of the permit for the Elysian estate, works must be constructed, including an interim signalised intersection treatment prior to stage 3.
Prior to stage 3. So I ask Councillor Aziz a question. Would you agree to the insertion into paragraph 2 a requirement that the same restriction on the issue of titles be imposed on the developer to the south, who has the same requirement on their permit but doesn't appear in your motion, your original motion? So the question is, would you agree to the inclusion of Wolfden within that portion of the motion?
Mr Acting Mayor, I'm very, very happy to respond to Councillor Rowe's question. But before I do that, I just want to refresh my command of the facts on this matter as a result of the question that he asked to Ms New. Can you please advise the Chamber again, what is the estate to which you referred which relate to Wolfden?
Through you, Mr Mayor, the estate is called the Elysian Estate. It's developed by Wolfden.
Yep. And what is the relationship of that estate, and I'm asking this question purely from a knowledge building point of view, not from the point of view of wanting to be a smart aleck in any way, believe me. What is the relationship of that estate to what we've got on the screen tonight in terms of the recommendation?
The relationship is that signalised intersection H3, as shown in the precinct structure plan, is equally required by that estate to provide access to Hall Road from the south.
And a further question to you, Ms New, at what stage?
It's stage 3 of the Elysian estate under that permit.
And are we at stage 3?
Through you, Mr Mayor, I'm not clear on that.
So how does Councillor Rowe then expect me to answer his question, given the lack of clarity on the part of the officers, in terms of imposing something, and let me just be very, very clear about this, imposing something in a recommendation that already exists in a planning permit already passed by this council, and of which that particular developer, Wolfden or whoever, already has an obligation towards under their planning permit. If the officers are not sure as to whether that particular developer is at that stage right now in terms of where their development is at, how can Councillor Rowe possibly expect this of me?
Oh, I assume that's a rhetorical question, so we'll let Councillor Rowe
actually,
continue.
it's not a point of order against you, Mr Acting Mayor. I know you're a teacher, but it's not really up to you to label a question rhetorical or otherwise. It's actually a very practical question rather than anything that calls for a rhetorical response in kind. So could I ask you to please take back your comment and rephrase the question as a practical question? Because I've asked a practical question. How can I possibly include in this recommendation, let me repeat that again for you, a recommendation that imposes an obligation on a developer that already exists under a planning permit issued by this council, when the very officer standing here as our expert to answer that question is not sure where they're at in terms of what stage their development is at.
I'm going to ask Councillor Rowe, is he preparing to answer that?
Mr Mayor, I'll defer to the acting manager who seems to have it at his fingertips.
Sorry, I'm sorry, point of order again, Mr Acting Mayor. You didn't address my point of order in relation to the fact that it's not a rhetorical question.
Okay, yeah.
Is it a practical question?
I think it's a practical question.
Thank you very much.
Mr Turner is about to answer, or attempt to answer.
Thank you, through you, Mr Chairman. The developer of the Elysian estate is not at the trigger point for their obligation in terms of the delivery of their part of the intersection.
Mr Acting Mayor, well, that answers the question for Councillor Rowe. No, I'm not prepared to move that as part of my recommendation.
Well, thank you, Councillor Aziz, and I would have been interested to see if you would have been prepared to. But at the end of the day, Mr Mayor, we're expecting a developer to have his permit changed at the Death Knock when Councillor...
Point of order.
Yep.
Sorry, I'm sorry to have to conduct debate in this fashion, and I know you're a formidable debater, Councillor Rowe. However, when you're making blatant statements of errors of fact, the legal advice and what I read from the actual planning permit proves that we're not actually changing the planning permit. In fact, number 2 is in accordance with the planning permit according to legal advice. And so, can you please at least do me the courtesy of basically stating that that is your opinion and not a fact, because the emotive language that is being thrown around the chamber can actually be quite dangerous to the ultimate cause of what we're trying to achieve here, which is the safety of our residents.
And that's fine, Councillor Aziz, but and I would perhaps question at some stage in relation to whether that legal advice comes from council's lawyers or in fact comes from another organisation that we're not aware of.
Point of order again, I'm sorry. Again, Councillor Rowe is casting aspersions on the veracity of the legal advice. What I mean by legal advice is that it's advice that has come from people that are professionally trained as lawyers and sworn through the Supreme Court of Victoria to practice law in the state of Victoria. Whether they happen to be council's lawyers or someone else's lawyers is entirely irrelevant. The fact is they're legally qualified.
I'll disagree on that, because I do believe if you're saying legal advice, I think it's a fair question to ask whose legal advice that is. And so I'd ask you if you could tell us, answer Councillor Rowe's question. Is it council's lawyers or...?
Mr Acting Mayor, first of all, Councillor Rowe never asked me a question. You're now asking me that question. And I'm making a philosophical point to simply say that when I say legal advice, clearly I haven't gone to the charcoal chicken shop down the road and asked them what they think of this matter, even though they may have some eminently qualified legal people. Clearly the advice that I am referring to has been passed on to me by people, as I said, that are legally trained in law and sworn to practice law in the state of Victoria. So it is not relevant what you're saying. Legal advice is legal advice. Whether we agree with it or not is another matter, but it's not up to me as a mere mortal that's not legally trained to actually disagree with it. So I don't understand the thrust of your question, and no, I'm not going to answer that.
Councillor Rowe?
Mr Mayor, Councillor Aziz is entitled to not answer any question that he doesn't wish to. Mr Mayor, I'll read a section out of the report prepared by council officers. Intersection H3 is needed because of development in both the north and south of Hall Road. Subdivision permits for both Lockhaven, north of Hall Road, and Elysian, south of Hall Road estates, and have been a requirement to construct an intersection at this location which services their respective estates. Both estates are at critical milestones in which the developers need to demonstrate how they will deliver the intersection and for their respective estates in accordance with their subdivisional permits. The developers of these estates, Dackland, represented by Urbis for Lockhaven, and Wolfdean, represented by Watson's Proprietary Limited and Schultz Consortium for Elysian, have not been able to reach agreement to share the cost of delivering the complete signalised cross intersection. Accordingly, the whole project will be split into 2 stages, whereby whichever developer seeks the estate development first will need to deliver an interim signalised T-intersection. This intersection will function like that delivered in intersection H2, which already exists on Hall Road, where it is a T intersection whereby one of the legs is still to be delivered. The second developer will then need to deliver the balance of the intersection in line with the estate development. The design of each stage of this intersection will need to satisfy Vic Road's standards for safety and to ensure full turn movements throughout the interim signalised section. Now, Mr Mayor, Acting Mayor, it's my understanding that the road or the road to the north is currently being designed by Vic Roads after negotiations over 3, 4 weeks ago, 5 weeks ago. Would that be right, Mr Duncan? Where the negotiations took part with Vic Roads and they're designing the intersection?
Councillor, I just asked, are you seeking extension?
I am.
Yeah. How many minutes?
I would gladly move that, Mr Mayor.
Yeah.
Mr. Acting Mayor.
So,
how many minutes, sorry, let's clarify, because it's with discretion.
Whatever he wants. Give him 2 minutes.
Whatever.
it's unlike Councillor Aziz to be so generous.
All right, all right. Let me say what I mean. Give him 10 seconds.
No. Okay.
So,
Are you happy with 3 minutes?
I'm happy, Mr Acting
Okay.
Mayor. The issue is not the construction of this intersection or the enforcement of it. Because my understanding is that we actually hold a bond, which this motion says that we shouldn't be holding, that in the event that the developer failed to build it, can we have the multiple? What's the multiple of the cost that we're currently holding?
Through you, Mr Mayor, there is no bond at this point. There's
Well, what are they? Have they agreed to pay?
there has been discussion around a bond as to whether that would be an appropriate way of allowing a further stage in the absence of the intersection.
Not been reached as yet.
That has not been agreed to
Okay.
at this point.
So that shoots down one of my arguments that we were holding the money. And if we're not, then we revert to the conditions of the permit where they will not get their titles released on stage 9. It's not possible to build this intersection immediately. It's under design and has to be designed by Vic Roads. And I just question the validity of going through this process whilst the officers have undertaken all of the negotiations. They've not made concessions. They've not said you don't have to build it. And they're going to hold up the titles on all of stage 9. Now, that's all laid out. And this is where I question the bringing of this particular motion. I understand the issues in relation to Hall Road. I've represented that area since 1992 and Hall Road has been a headache ever since. We've got significant funds that we as council are currently holding for the intersection of Hall Road. And my understanding is we're negotiating Hall Road and Evans Road, which is the major accident spot on that road at the moment. So that depends on Vic Roads. Vic Roads has taken over responsibility for the road. And why bring it forward now? I truly don't understand it. And against officers' advice in relation to our advocacy program, we're seeking to interrupt that by bringing in a road that is prioritised, has now passed to Vic Roads, and there are funds there to construct it. So I'm still opposed to the motion, and I think these things need to be applied equally to those people who were supposed to negotiate and failed to negotiate over a 3-year period. And it seems that somehow someone has decided that they want to move the responsibility to one developer, not two.
Okay, thanks.
Point of
Councillor,
order.
yeah?
Point of order. Seriously.
I've sat down, mate.
Yeah, I know, but what you said as a concluding statement riles me, and it's error of fact. I mean, why are we raising this now? Because it's a report in our agenda. And when councillors get presented with reports in their agenda, there is an opportunity to deliver better policy to the City of Casey. I see, look, I'll deal with this in my concluding remarks, but I just wanted to address head on whatever insinuation Councillor Roy was making that there was something unusual or sinister about what we're doing here. We do this every day in the City of Casey. We deal with council reports. We change the recommendations on occasions. We agree with them on other occasions. We turn them upside down on other occasions. The ultimate objective is to deliver what the residents have entrusted us to do, and that is better government to this city. It is that simple.
Councillor Zid, I'll agree with you because I do believe we have the right to bring it up, and it'll come out in the debate and in the final vote. So I accept that and rule in your favour. Is there any other debate against? Yep, Councillor Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor, Acting Chair. Having a look at this and having a chat with the officers earlier and having a read of the planning permit, and it's my understanding, Kerry or Duncan, there are currently 2 planning permits, one to the north, one to the south. Both planning permits require an equal contribution from the developers to construct H3, is that right?
Through you, Acting Mayor, the requirement is for them to build a signalised T to service their estate at the stage as specified in the permit. It will depend on which one goes first as to who does the substantive scope of works, and the requirement is not for another leg or duplication of the road as part of that.
Right. So whoever gets there first builds their interim, whoever comes next finishes it, essentially. I don't understand why we need to get involved when there is an interim designed and listed in the planning permit to service the needs of the community. The interim requires traffic signals. I've had a chat to the officers, they informed me that it also includes a pedestrian crossing safe for people to cross with the supermarket and shops and those going across the road. Councillor Aziz, you refer to the crash data, and let me say this, I think one crash is one too many, but in terms of funding on a roads, we have to look at what resources that we do have and people have, and I think, can you advise me the dates and how many accidents there were?
Point of order, not on the point you're about to raise, because that's highly relevant, but on the point that you've just raised, which is highly irrelevant, because there is no, Mr. Acting Mayor, there is absolutely no imposition on the ratepayers of the City of Casey as a result of the actions we're taking tonight. We hold the money. We hold the money, and it should be spent in a way that ensures that people are safe. What is the good of having money sitting in a bank when people could possibly hold the risk of dying, Mr. Acting Mayor? And that's the question that I'm asking. And so your point is entirely irrelevant, Councillor Jackson. It's not about intervening to spend money of ratepayers that we wouldn't normally spend. The money's there to be spent, and it's locked away, and it's locked away for that purpose. So I ask you please to reconsider the statement that you've just made.
Hang on, let's just...
I'm not sure. Point of order.
Yeah, I'm just wondering can you clarify what the statement was? I know that there was a question about numbers.
He insinuated that as a result of taking this action tonight, we're somehow meddling and we're going to impose on the ratepayers of Casey an imposition that they would not otherwise have if we weren't moving this motion. So error of fact fundamentally is the point of order. That it's not the case in this matter. We're not advocating to spend extra money, extra ratepayers' money, that is.
Well, I will rule on that I accept that, but I think Councillor Jackson no doubt will address it in his extra debate that he's about to give.
Wasn't sure that was where I was insinuating.
No, okay.
Look, I'll just move on. In my view, there are planning permits and planning conditions properly constructed by the office in relation to this intersection that comply to both developers north and south. And I think, I'm really concerned that we're meddling in this at this late stage. I trust the officers and the work that they do, and I'm satisfied with the advice that I've been given and the report from the officers.
Question?
Okay. Question? Yep.
Do you want to go first?
No, he was just telling me about you.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Okay. To Councillor Jackson, did you hear me when I said that there is legal advice that suggests that what we're putting up tonight is actually quite lawful and not in contradiction with the planning permit conditions? I just asked if you heard me say that.
I heard you, Councillor Ziz. I also heard I don't know where the advice comes from, and I haven't also had the liberty to see the advice.
That's not the question that I asked you. Can I ask you, Councillor Jackson, are you a practitioner of law? Are you not?
Relevance?
Relevance.
Well, the relevance is that you seem to be offering a connotation on that advice, which I'm not sure I like.
The connotation, Councillor Zizin, I'll leave it to my last point. I haven't read the advice. Advice is complicated, advice is lengthy, advice covers a lot of things, and I'm not comfortable accepting a paraphrased advice.
Thank you. Further question, Mr. Acting Mayor. And had that advice been introduced to you, if I make that advice to you available right now, are you legally qualified, notwithstanding the fact that you are a legal practitioner, to actually comment on it or to evaluate it in a way that would provide this chamber with legal meaning as a result of your conclusions?
Well, Councillors, it'd be outside of my, in my view, to provide council with advice, legal advice from me. I could certainly utilise my skills to review the advice and form my own opinion, but I wouldn't want to be providing legal advice to council, of which a number of matters may be raised. Firstly, as a legal representative, the conflict that I may have to council to provide such advice, and further,
and you missed that. You missed that. Point of order. Point of order. Point of order. Point of order.
And further, Councillor Aziz, my obligation under the legal professional rules, of which I cannot provide advice until I have been properly instructed and have an agreement with such an organisation.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson.
I have raised the point of order, and you failed to address it, Mr. Acting Mayor.
I'm addressing it right now, Councillor.
Well, can I articulate my point of order?
Of course.
Thank you. My point being made, and it's an interesting question you raise, is that you're actually not an expert in planning law, Mr. Councillor Jackson,
order.
irrespective
Point
of your
Mr.
conflict of interest
Acting
obligations.
Point of order. Error of fact. I'm not sure when I said I was an expert in planning law.
No, you didn't. I'm telling you, you're not.
Okay, Councillor Aziz, I accept the answer that I've heard, and I think you're going to get an opportunity to bring it into your closing debate, I've no doubt. Besides, I don't think we can afford Councillor Jackson's advice anyway. So. Okay. Councillor Crestani, do you wish to exercise your right as seconder? No? Yes, of course you can. I'll get you to stand, that's all.
In relation to the development contributions that are there, it is my understanding that there is a process being undertaken because of Vic Roads having assumed that road and certain works having been completed by developers, whereby those funds, by the DCP agreement, are to be returned to developers along the road. Is that correct from past discussions?
Through you, Acting Mayor, yes, there's been discussions with the various land developers along Hall Road that have each delivered sections of project RDO9. RDO9 does not include the full intersection construction. It includes the through lanes, urbanisation works associated with drainage and so forth. So these works are not fully funded by the DCP. Intersection H3 is not funded by the DCP, but there may be some contributions available to developers, and that process of sharing the funds needs to be worked through with all eligible entities.
Okay, is there any further debate before I hand over to Councillor Aziz? Councillor Aziz, you can close.
Thank you, Mr. Acting Mayor. Look, the debate has been alive and well in the chamber for a long time, so I'll be brief. And I'll just simply rest on the points that I made in my opening statements. It's good to have the opportunity of democracy and for me to question, and try and understand the perspectives of people like Councillor Jackson, who has clearly argued from a legalistic point of view, and I respect his right to do so. As an elected representative, of course, I want to make it absolutely clear the council never seeks to put him in that compromised conflict of interest position. I just wanted to clarify whether or not his credentials on planning law are as I understood them to be, and I have understood them to be correct. And so what I want to say in concluding is that this particular motion simply addresses head-on a safety issue that our residents have brought to our attention, and an issue that has been supported by an extensive traffic engineering report that underscores the seriousness of incidents that continue to occur around Hall Road. It is clear to me that the money has been sitting there and waiting for that intersection to be signalised. We're not impeding or intervening on anybody's planning permit rights or issues as a result of moving the amended recommendation. And the reason we are moving it is because it's a policy opportunity for us here in the City of Casey, when this report has come before us, for us to introduce enhancements or improvements to the recommendation that could assure and deliver that safety and fast-track issues of concern that thousands of our residents living in that estate have. And so that's basically the point of it. I'm seizing on it. I've never ever shown away or walked away from a debate or a lively argument. And for this reason, I'm sticking by and fully supporting the amended recommendations that I've put before you here, Mr. Acting Mayor. And I call upon the support of all my colleagues in the chamber to make our residents feel at ease in terms of the safety of their very neighbourhood. Thank you.
Okay, I shall put that to the vote. All those in favour of Councillor Aziz's motion? All those against? On my casting vote, I'll declare it carried. Thank you. If we could ask Councillor Aziz, Councillors Stapleton and the Mayor to come back in.
Thank you. We'll move on to item 6.8. Councillor Rosario.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to move the report in my name, please.
Seconded by? Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Councillor Smith, my fellow ward partner for Rivergum. Mr. Mayor, this item is in relation to the urgent item of business I raised about the speed on Pound Road and Strice Road, and one of the issues there. And look, I acknowledge the report and the efforts of council officers to execute a very difficult task, which is getting Vic Roads to reduce the speed limit on that sort of road. At least there's been some progress from the report that Vic Roads will monitor the road for the speeds, but they don't seem to want to reduce the speed at the moment, Mr. Mayor. And I still stand by the fact that at least a stretch of Pound Road from the South Gippsland Highway through to Hallam Road and past Hallam Road to the roundabout at Pound Road, Strice Road, I think should still be 60 kilometres, slow it down. That is a very well-used stretch of road. And can also be quite dangerous as well. And we've already proven this, and I think even a past report has acknowledged that Vic Roads have said that they do acknowledge that the visibility isn't exactly very good on that stretch of Pound Road, because as you elevate up, Mr. Mayor, and then you come down, you can't see until you get over what's down below. And I find that a concern. That's why I think reducing the speed limit by 10 kilometres and bringing that in line with Hallam Road as well will actually make that area, at least that stretch of road, much safer. So all I can ask is for the officers to continue to work with Vic Roads, please, and to ensure that our residents are safe, because I do have grave concerns. I know my residents do as well, and I'm sure Councillor Smith will agree with me, as both of us do travel down that road as well, yet not the very best when it comes to visibility. So with that, Mr. Mayor, I'll commit that to the chambers. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any questions or dissent on the matter? Then that is carried. Thank you. We'll now move to item 6.15, Councillor Aziz, the draft 2017-18 financial statements.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to move the recommendation in my name.
Seconded by Councillor Ablett.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, it is usually the Mayor of the day that moves these statements, because basically what we're doing as a council is authorising yourself and the deputies to sign them to be presented to the Victorian Auditor General's office. And the reason I wanted to rise tonight in support of the statements is basically to underscore once again what a tightly managed administration the City of Casey is, and to also bring to notice, to public notice especially, the comments that have previously been made by the independent members of our Audit and Ethics Committee when they've said that Casey has actually been a shining model in the midst of the local government landscape in the state of Victoria when it comes to achieving efficiency and effectiveness, but also in delivering tightly managed financial management, if you like, overlay to their residents. And it goes a great deal to the wonderful work that our two officers that are present with us today, our Chief Financial Officer and all of his team, ably led by yourself, Mr. Charles, do day in, day out to make sure that Casey is reflected in this fabulous light. And you need to be, because we have a lot of responsibility. We have the fastest growing population of any council. And like I keep saying on every occasion, the responsibilities that we take upon ourselves and the decisions we make affect more Victorians than any other municipal government in our state. And so there is no shirking away from that responsibility. And it is an absolute pleasure every year as we finish a financial year and embark on a new one, that we just reflect on how hard our people work every day to deliver that sort of performance to our residents, and also to ensure that Casey is well equipped to face the challenges of the future and to spend the money of its ratepayers responsibly, to keep delivering in the way we have, both in terms of capital as well as operational expenditure, Mr. Mayor. So another great milestone reached for this council, and another one that I feel very, very privileged to be a part of, thanks in no small measure to the great work of all of our team in finance, and also our hard-working members of our Audit and Ethics Committee and the entire executive team and all the councillors.
Thank you, Councillor Aziz. Are there any questions or dissent on the matter? And that is carried. Thank you. How are we going, Georgia? Are we enjoying the night? Yeah. Time for bed? No, not quite. You can leave whenever you want to, but yeah. We'll move along to consideration of reports of committees, sorry. Is there a mover and seconder to receive and note the record of the Assembly of Councillors as set out in the agenda? Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Flannery. Is there any dissent? And that is carried. Are there any petitions for this evening? There are no petitions. We'll move on to notices of motion. 3241, Councillor Aziz, advertising signage.
Well, I would be delighted to move that in my name, but it's...
Oh, sorry. Do you need a seconder now, or you want to change it?
It'd be great to get a seconder, yeah.
Councillor Cristani had a hand up there. Yeah.
It's fascinating when you write something up 2 weeks ago and then forget why the hell you wrote it up in the first place. But look, I recall that I had an approach from the Narrewarren Tennis Club, actually, that lives in the great Max Pawsey Reserve, which is the council reserve across the road from Bunjil Place. And it's a great club, and a club that I've actually known since I was 16 years of age. Not that I was ever an avid tennis player, but they're a hard-working club that tries to engage the community to get active and participate in the wonderful sport of tennis. The issue they're confronting, as well as many other clubs in the city of Casey, comes down to limitations on their finances and limitations on their fundraising, and they use the opportunity of advertising around the club grounds that they've been given by council to raise money for themselves and for their clubs to spend on administrative support, as well as buying new equipment, you know, tennis nets, tennis rackets, balls, all that kind of stuff. And so they've found that the council's current policy on advertising around sporting grounds is a little bit limiting for them. And I've taken some very strong advice from our officers, led ably by Mr. Callum Patty, who has been doing some amazing work with them alongside his team. And he's suggested, I'm landing you right in it now, he's suggested that I come back to the chamber with a recommendation that we examine what could possibly be done in order to alleviate the policy restrictions and certainly provide better opportunities for them to continue with their advertising. And so I bring this motion to the chamber, Mr. Mayor, in the hope that tonight we can achieve exactly that, and that we're able to, through this policy revision work, assist not just the Narre Warren Tennis Club, but any other club in the city of Casey that might be struggling a bit. We've got to remember that these clubs are made up of mum and dad volunteers, no matter where they are, and so they are worthy and deserving of our recognition and our support at every opportunity. And you know, just because we pass a policy, and we pass policies for a number of reasons, you know, uniformity and a range of things. But when it's brought to our attention that clubs can actually do better, in my view, we should seize every opportunity to give them the chance to do better, because when they do better, their members get fitter, our kids get fitter. It's just a better arrangement for everybody. So on that basis, I commend the motion to the chamber.
Councillor Cristani, you wish to say something?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to ask a question. I probably should have asked you previously. Councillor Aziz, was there any indication that this would look towards political advertising as well? I believe our policy currently doesn't allow for political advertising. It's just a neutral question.
The question is that politically motivated? Because currently we don't allow permanent signage of politicians.
Mr. Mayor, I don't believe it's neutral one bit. It's been asked by a politician, how could it be neutral? No. Look, it's not really, but we're 2 months away from a state election, and to be honest, I'd like to treat the two matters as separate. So political advertising is a little bit of a hot potato at the moment. I know it raises money for clubs and all that, but what I'll do is I would actually like business advertising and commercial advertising to take precedence over political advertising, and actually be governed by a board of directors that will make decisions in the interest of the club rather than what their political affiliations may be. So on the other side of the election, post-November, maybe we can tackle that question in the main, but at this point in time of the election cycle, I'd rather stick to what we have there.
Can they have political advertising?
Councillor Flannery.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. This thing about advertising has been going on for quite a while. I, with Officer Callum Patty, we've discussed this with Fountain Gate Gators, which is also over at Macapawsey Reserve. They wanted to put up signs because they were, thinking about closing their club up because of lack of advertising. Because unfortunately they've got a multicultural club, and a lot of the multicultural players that play cricket for them, don't go out and spend a lot of money within their club. They come and play cricket, then go home. So they're trying to get sponsorship. It's in an area where it's got an older demographics of people, and therefore we're trying to get young players into to play cricket. Some of them don't have a lot of money, so we've tried to push for the advertising to face outwards so people could see it on the roadways going up Maggie Drive, or Maggie Drive. And but what the conclusion was that the cricket club could put up banners. They could make banners up. They could put them up on game day. They can put them on the nights that they train, but then they'd have to take them down. the cricket club said that it's a menial task. There's a lot of effort's got to go into it. They don't have a lot of volunteers, so putting them up, putting them down every day. But that was one of the things that we come up with, a conclusion we come up with, that if they want to do advertising, they can do it with the banners and tie them up, and they can be facing the road while they're playing cricket, but they've got to come down at the end of the day. So I don't know if that helps with the tennis club. Same thing with the tennis club. They can put up a banner at the end of the day. They can come down. This, I think, maybe this happened many years ago with. If I remember something about Cranbourne, or was Dan Cranbourne? Correct me if I'm wrong. About political advertising going up on fences, and then council put in a policy that there was no political advertising going on fences facing the roadway, and that's why this policy come in place. Now it's being raised by Councillor Aziz, which I'm really pleased about, because I've been pushing for the advertising for quite a while now, and it is an issue with struggling clubs. You've got to remember that everybody that looks after sporting clubs are volunteers, and volunteers find it very hard to raise money. We've got the mortgage rates at home, and we've got to feed the kids, send them to private schools or even state schools, clothing them and trying to give them the best lifestyle they possibly can. But trying to find advertising and getting advertisers to come in, they want signs up. But at the moment, the best thing we've got at the moment is putting up banners. So if you want to put up a banner facing the roadway, I believe that's acceptable. But signs facing the roadway are not acceptable. Banners can go up, come down.
Thanks, Councillor Flannery. Anyone else want to make a comment on the matter? Any other questions? Any dissent on the matter? And that is carried. Thank you. We'll move on to Councillor Cristani, Mr. Stephen Archibald.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to move. Actually, I've got some slight alterations in the words I sent through. Oh, it's reflected. I just changed the notice of motion just slightly, so I'll allow my colleagues to have a read. I'll read it for your benefit. That council invite Mr. Stephen Archibald with his wife to a future council meeting in order to present a certificate to acknowledge his work on the Community Safety Committee since its inception in 2017, and thank him for his leadership role in the Narre Warren North community. Mr. Mayor, I'd like to move that in my name.
Can we just say a certificate, present a certificate to him?
Sorry, yes, present a certificate to him.
Yep.
Acknowledging his work, yes, thanks.
Seconded by Councillor Saray.
Thank you, Councillor Saray. Councillor Saray is a fellow colleague on the Safety Committee with me and was one of the original members before I was even on there, with Councillor Berkelmans, who actually pioneered that committee. I'll be brief, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Archibald was one of the members who was initiated with this committee, and he showed exceptional leadership at a time where we had concerns in the community around home invasions, and his street at a variety of homes in the same evening, in the early hours of the morning, was invaded, and he rallied the street together, and he found a communicative way in order to ensure they strengthen the street together to look after each other and for any future events. And that emerged some incredible innovations by him and the street, and I think that he should be honoured for that, and the officers have expressed that to me as well. He's gotten too busy, and they've had some challenges this last year, and he's finding he can't continue on the committees at this stage, but he really enjoyed being on there and he contributed. But if we could invite him, I think it would show a great deal of appreciation for his input. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cristani. I think it's great you've picked up on that he has some issues, and recognition is a very powerful thing, and obviously you're well in touch with what's going on up there, so I welcome it. I don't know if anyone has any questions or dissent on that. It's a really good thing. Then that is carried. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr.
We'll get you to stand up again.
Thank you. I won't talk as long as Councillor Aziz, but I will raise this motion. Next motion.
At least she's having a crack at you.
Thank you. I'd like to move the item, as you see before, in my name.
Seconded by
Thank you.
Councillor Aziz.
There's an opportunity, if there's debate, you might get to speak on that. So, thank you. Yes, I briefly mentioned this, and Mr. Mayor, you too were at the event with the Casey Sleep Out, and there was a video that was meant to be shown, and we didn't get to see it. I would have liked to, and oh, sorry.
Did that show you falling in the beanbag?
Something like that.
Yeah.
Moving right along. I don't believe it was shown on the night, but I did leave early, so I believe that they must have shown it later on then. So this video, we would like to have it shown, moving it so that we can invite the 4 ladies in the video to a general purposes meeting, and they have already been vetted, and I believe that they would, they indicate they would like to come. But I just want to extend a formal invitation through Council, and I believe that there is merit. This has been raised at the Access and Inclusion Committee, and it came from the Access and Inclusion Committee as an idea. So I put this in tonight to give them a bigger platform in order to tell their story. Homelessness is in the city, whether we like to acknowledge it or not, but I do thank the officers for their work on this item, and it is all community issue, just like all the social issues are. These particular ladies have emerged out of homelessness and are on the other side of it. For them to tell their story bravely and to be able to help us guide others as a way through this issue is invaluable, and I look forward to hearing them present should they take up the invitation. Mr. Mayor, I'd love to have my colleagues' support in their invitation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cristani. Are there any questions or dissent? And that is carried. We'll move along to urgent business, which I have one, and it's urgent because it's related to state governments making pledges, and what we want to do, they've just been made, and what we want to do is get more detail about the things that have been put forward so we can understand them better and pass that information on to residents and councillors can understand them. So I move that it be moved into urgent business, seconded by Councillor Aziz. Is there any dissent?
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, before you make a decision, I need to declare a conflict of interest.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, I just didn't realise.
No, sorry, I didn't think of it either. So.
An indirect conflict of interest because it's a conflicting duty because I'm a state candidate. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Saray. We'll give you time to vacate the chamber. Thank you. I'd like to move the following recommendation in my name. Seconded by Councillor Cristani. Thank you very much. As you can see there are a lot of things that have been put on the table by both governments, which is outstanding because, as we said in pre-council, for the sake of the gallery and all those watching online, this group of officers and councillors has already achieved more in promised outcomes than any other group, and I think that's a really good news story. And with more to come, I think it's going to be a really good success story for our campaign, Commit to Casey. And I want to thank Gerard and the communications team, all the councillors who have supported politicians coming out here. I've never seen so many politicians from so many parties out here talking to us, asking about our research, what are the needs of various areas of our city, and the results are coming forward. And we want to thank all the politicians for coming here and talking to us. It's been second to none. I've been on the council 10 years, and we've never had so many politicians here filling up whole rooms wanting to know how can we help the residents of Casey. So they're about getting great outcomes, as that's why the reason we are here. So councillors, I can proudly say we've conducted ourselves in the most successful advocacy campaign of any local government. I want to thank all my fellow councillors, the state government's commitment to $750 million to duplicate the Cranbourne line from Dandenong brings to more than $2 billion in commitments for Casey in 2018. So it's a lot of money. We've secured around $100 million in road projects, as well as a significant budget and election commitments for schools and hospitals. The opposition promise of $487 million to extend the rail line to Clyde is also really welcomed by our council and residents. While we are pleased with commitments from Liberal, Labor and the Greens, promises to extend the Cranbourne rail line have come and gone from major parties in the past. So this is a time the campaign isn't over until we see the rail line built. We, with the community, must keep the pressure on our politicians right up until election day, and I urge our residents to join the campaign by following Commit to Casey on Facebook and making your voice heard. So once again, to conclude, thank you all councillors and officers. This has been an unbelievably successful campaign. More to come for the state election, and with a federal election following, we'll keep vamping up our efforts and communication. And this isn't just about talking to groups, and we've expressed this when we've met with groups of politicians. It's not just about meeting at election time, it's about meeting every year. So we build a relationship with all parties, and the amazing thing is, what I realised was there are a lot of state politicians who don't understand the real needs of Casey. And so they've learnt a lot by coming out and talking to our team. I want to thank particularly Paul Hamilton, who led our transport side of things. He even came out to the Lynbrook Residents Association night and gave the residents out there the big picture of what we're advocating for in roads, rail and buses. And buses are an absolute major issue which came out of the Transport Forum, which I attended down at the Salandra Community Centre. So well done to everyone. It's a good news story, and we'll keep pushing. Please, all residents, get on board by getting on Facebook, joining online as well. We are getting great results, and well done to everyone. And hopefully we can get some more detail on this so we can share the good news and understand it better. So are there any questions or dissent on the matter? Then that is carried. Thank you very much. Are there any other items of urgent business for this evening? Oh, I think Councillor Saray will bring her back in. I think she had an item. So there's no need to run. We're waiting. We'll wait for you. Councillor Saray, did you have an item of urgent business?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I do have an urgent business, and it's urgent for timing, and it's in regards for Councillor Jackson. So Councillor Jackson has a conflict of interest.
So you're living?
I am, Mr Mayor.
We'll give you time. No, we want you to run.
Mr Mayor, I have a conflict of interest. It's a direct conflict of interest because the matter relates to myself.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Councillor Saray.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. It's up to Councillor Jennifer Granted Abbins from the... I've actually got from the 17th of September to the 3rd of October.
Can someone second that? Councillor Cristani?
To the 3rd.
So is there any dissent on it being admitted to urgent business?
Oh, sorry.
Then that is carried.
Yeah.
Thank you. Now you can, over to you, Councillor Saray.
Yes, that Councillor Jackson be granted leave of absence from the 17th of
Now we'll get a seconded by Councillor Aziz.
Thank you, Councillor Aziz. Self-explanatory. Yes, I'd like to move that. Thank you.
Is there any dissent on the matter? Then that is carried. We'll bring Councillor Jackson back in. Who's going to tell him the bad news? Oh, sorry, he's not at the door yet. Well, really sorry, sorry, Jacko.
Got to change my flights.
Yeah. So, are there any other items of urgent business for this evening? Then that concludes council meeting. We'll move into closed council. So, can I please get a mover and seconder to move that council resolve itself into closed council and resume after a 5-minute adjournment. Moved by Councillor Aziz, seconded by Councillor